focus through all the latest in the transfer market. Let's start with Rashford, shall we? It was always going to be a big name that we're going to be following possibly all summer long. What is the latest?
Yeah, he's obviously a huge superstar. You know, he's been in a huge part of the Premier League over the last few seasons. And obviously back in July 2023, he signed that bumper new 5-year deal to keep him at Old Trafford for a number of years. He was given a big wage packet of over £300,000 a week. He'd just come off the back of that fantastic campaign where he'd scored close to 30 goals in the season. And he looked like being the main man for Manchester United for many years to come. It's funny how things can change in football. Last season, he was sent out on loan for the second half of the campaign to Aston Villa, where he re-emerged as someone that could still do it at the very highest level. Couple of goals, 4 assists, some eye-catching performances in the Champions League and the Premier League. And Aston Villa had the option to get Marcus Rashford to stay at Villa Park for £40 million, but they decided against exercising that option in that loan deal that was done and instead decided to send him back to Manchester United. Now, Marcus Rashford still has 3 years left on his Old Trafford contract. And obviously when he's on huge wages, if he's not going to feature in their first team, they need to try and find a way for him to move on and continue his football elsewhere. And that's where a number of clubs in and around Europe have been having those discussions. We know that Marcus Rashford has said on a number of occasions he'd love to join Barcelona. That would be a dream of his. In April this year, he said, I'd like to still play at the highest level and I'd still like to play in the Champions League. So that rules out a number of other sides as well. And over the course of the last 24 hours, it's quite interesting, Jules, because guess what? He's been speaking about Barcelona again and potentially playing alongside Lamine Yamal. Now, who wouldn't want to play alongside someone of his quality in Calibre and someone who's going to be hugely influential in the world of football over the course of the next few years? So, yeah, Marcus Rashford did actually sit down with Spanish YouTubers, ex-Bayer, who have 5.8 million followers on the video platform. Previously, they have interviewed big-name stars such as Lamine Yamal himself. Here's what Marcus Rashford had to say about potentially playing alongside Yamal.
We saw you commented in Instagram. What do you think about him?
He's going to be... It's difficult to put into words what he's doing because he's not supposed to be doing it.
No.
16, 17.
We were with Lamine and we asked to him, what do you think when you are on the pitch with this age? And he says that it's normal.
He's just playing now.
Yeah, he's normal.
Yeah, but this alone is a skill. To have this mentality is a skill.
Would you like to play with Lamine someday?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You know, I think everybody in the world wants to play with the best, you know, so
yeah.
Hopefully we'll see.
Very interesting, wasn't it? Really interesting. He looked relaxed, he looked calm, he was nice and open there, speaking to those big Spanish YouTubers who have done a lot of interviews, Jules, with some of the big Barcelona stars, and they have millions of followers worldwide. So the fact that he's prepared to sit down and be so open and transparent with them. But we know that Deco is a fan of Marcus Rashford. But we also know that Barcelona are interested in Nico Williams, of course, and they also like Luis Diaz at Liverpool. So Marcus Rashford on a list of potentials for Barcelona, but he's not at the top of the list. We understand Nico Williams very much the front runner to head to Barcelona if they can get the finances right. And that is also a problem with Barcelona signing players. They have to be very creative and careful with what they do. And as we said on the transfer show on Friday, you know, you've got a situation where Marcus Rashford's price right now will be probably around 40 million, and you'll have to find, you know, close to £300,000 a week. In 6 weeks' time, in 10 weeks' time, if Marcus Rashford is still at Old Trafford, those numbers might change ever so slightly. So I'd imagine that deal potentially could be one that goes on into the window, maybe even into August, maybe even close to deadline day.
Let's get to a deal.
Rashford, who's very strategically done an interview with a Spanish influencer where he's talked about being interested in a move to Barcelona. Now, given how difficult it is to speak to any Premier League footballer on social media, and given that he chooses who he speaks to very carefully indeed, I think we can read a lot into that. And he's talked about the fact that he'd love to play in the same team as Lamine Yamal. He's talked about the fact that Yamal is such a good player, as we all know. Yeah. And he's talked about the fact that his prodigious youth makes him a superstar. The interesting thing about the interview is that if he were to join Barcelona, I don't think he would be in the same team because they both play in the same position. But I don't think Rashford is too worried about that. I think he just wants to get there. And given the season that he's had with Aston Villa, every chance that could happen.
Isn't that interesting, though? When, obviously he would have loved to have seen the season out with Villa, but picked up that injury. He actually had impressed for Thomas Tuchel with England as well. Again, we get a little bit of a stunt and a step back with Marcus Rashford, which we seem to get quite often. So I understand the strategy, but is it actually going to happen? Or is it just there as a Marcus Rashford could play for a Barcelona, and then also obviously knowing how high the star quality is of Lamine Yamal and what he's doing, and that he's the next generation, if you like, coming through, aligning himself with that. How much do we actually read into it?
Well, the interesting thing around Barcelona is that what they need is depth, and I think depth is what cost them towards the back end of last season. It's certainly in Europe. I think as far as the positions that Rashford could play in, Yamal obviously plays on the right. Rafinha has made himself a Ballon d'Or contender on the left-hand side. Now, do they have the depth behind those players? Lewandowski obviously makes up that front three. You would say not, and I think that is one of the things that did cost them. So could it happen? Well, Barcelona have said they're interested, but they haven't negotiated yet with Manchester United, and that's going to be the key thing, whether Manchester United believe that Barca can get to where they want to be in terms of expenditure. So I think that's going to be one for us to keep our eyes on for the rest of the summer.
Well, that's another one with Jadon Sancho as well. Manchester United need to offload both these players, but the wages are the sticking point. Well, I mean, they got themselves into this situation in the first place, Indeed. Manchester United. But for the players, they obviously, their agents are fighting their corner. But have we seen enough from both Marcus Rashford and Jadon Sancho? And in terms of consistency, not just turning it on when it's needed, but the consistency from both of them, because arguably Jadon Sancho didn't really set the world alight. He had moments of brilliance for Chelsea, but didn't really set things alight. So how are they going to negotiate these big wage moves, and where do Manchester United fit within this? How much say have they got?
I think what might happen is that United end up having to pay the difference. They're going to have to take the financial hit on making sure that they can move the player out, but that they subsidise some of the wages so that they can go to the clubs they want to get to. Now, let's bear in mind that Scott McTominay went to Napoli and they wanted him out. They said his wages, all the very same narratives around these two players, and he's become the MVP at Napoli, winning the title and scoring goals, and really getting some United fans to say, hang on a minute, how come we did not get that Scott McTominay for us? And when you look at the kind of club that Jadon Sancho is being chased by, Napoli again and Juventus, both of whom could turn him into a superstar again. So I think Man United will have to take the hit, but in PR terms, if those two players again were to go to Italy and operate under very demanding coaches, Antonio Conte, as we all know, then it could well be the case that the spotlight starts to go back to Old Trafford and Ruben Amorim.
It always does, doesn't it?
It does indeed.
It's like a beacon. Let's talk about Napoli, actually. Nap Hand is on the back of the Sunday People. A couple of the papers have got this story as well. Kevin De Bruyne opening the door for a move for Jack Grealish to go to Napoli. Wants his teammate out there. How likely is that?
It's an interesting one, this, because, again, we talk about demanding managers, and Antonio Conte is very, very demanding. But it's been said that Grealish needs to be now at a club where he can be free to do the kind of thing he did at Aston Villa. So I'm quite fascinated that De Bruyne, because the story is in the papers that De Bruyne, having signed...
Manchester United's Marcus Rashford has said he would like to join Barcelona this summer and play with Lamine Yamal. Rashford is seeking a move away from Old Trafford and has been linked with a move to Camp Nou, although Barcelona are reportedly trying to sign Nico Williams from Athletic Club. Rashford spent the second half of last season on loan at Aston Villa after being frozen out by head coach Ruben Amorim, and has now gone public with his desire to make the move to Spain. Of course I'd love to, he said in an interview with Spanish influencer Javi Ruiz when asked about the possibility of joining Barcelona and playing with teenage sensation Yamal. Everyone wants to play with the best. Hopefully, we'll see. Spain is nice, and it's not too far from home, he added. If I train here for an extended period, it's great because my family can come visit for a few days. It's just a 3-hour flight. The weather's good here too.